Whether you're fly fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean casting nets, fish nerds, fish nerds, fish nerds, it's a podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Fish Nerds, the show about fish, fishing, and eating fish. I'm Clay Grove's Chief Executive Fish Nerd, licensed fishing guide, your best friend, and I'm super happy to be here, and I'm happy that you're listening. I hope you're healthy and well. If you're not, I hope that you're getting well. It's weird times out there in the world with this virus going around. I'm hiding out in my basement, trying to my best not to contact and come in contact with any real people, but through the magic of the internet, we can contact you, and we are happy to do it. Anyway, you found the Fish Nerd. We talk about fish, fishing, and eating fish. Show it always interesting, usually funny, and mostly true. Today on the podcast, we've got a really weird show for you tonight. We have my favorite cephalopod expert, Rich Ross, on tonight. And to help me chat with him is the amazing James. And we're going to talk all things cephalopod. We're going to talk about sex. We're going to talk about science. We're going to talk about life, all kinds of fun stuff. This show is not for the kids. So if you're a kid, don't listen. It's not that bad, but just you've been warned. Mom, Dad, if your kid's listening, you've been warned. Not appropriate for all ages. Before we do that, we are going to talk about, is it safe to go fishing during the times of a COVID outbreak? When you're in a pandemic, does fishing make sense? And so I've got a little help from a doctor who's going to help me with that. And of course, we'll have some fun. After the show, we're going to test out a new segment. We've got the Pond Lady back on, and she made a segment for us, and we want your feedback on it. So we're going to put it at the end of this episode. So listen after the credits, after the theme music, and then email clay@fishnerds.com with your feedback. Do we need another correspondent? Do you like the content she's bringing us? How can she improve? I always love new people, so I'm happy to have her on board, but it's her first try, so I want to really get your opinion on it. But before that, I think it's important to jump into our topics right away. And our first topic is it safe to go fishing during a pandemic? And so I contacted Dr. Ryan Gray, who's a podcasting friend of mine, and he's a physician, and he's an educator, runs a whole bunch of podcasts. He wouldn't come on the show, so I'll do the voice work for him, but I assure you, this is how he talks. So I'll do both voices, and you can just guess which one is him. I sent him a message on Facebook, and I said, hey, you want to come on my pod? I need a doctor who can give recommendations on fishing during the coronavirus. Lots of opinions floating around. And this is what Ryan said. Dude, I'm stretched thin right now. We're going crazy. That's how he actually sounds. I say, yeah, I bet, no big deal. And of course, Ryan, no gray fun, says, final answer is stay at home. Smiley face emoji. I wrote ha ha, even though it wasn't that funny. And then, of course, he can't stop because he's a doctor. Obviously, the fishermen are like, what's the difference if I'm home alone or alone on a boat? And I say, right. And I catch a fish and never see a person or have to go to the supermarket. And Dr. Sucker of Fun Gray says, well, boats break and you need rescuing. Exposure people require them to save you versus a COVID patient. Of course, I'm very polite, because I am always polite. And I say, good points, Doc. And then, of course, he can't stop. People get in car accidents on the way to the lake requiring hospital services that aren't available, etc. And I say, okay, good point. So I know where he's going, and I'm not interested anymore. He's probably right. And people have heart attacks when they catch the biggest fish of their lives. And then, ha ha, laugh till you cry emoji. And I, of course, write, ha ha, perfect. And then, of course, he shares a link to a Kentucky family that went missing in the Chesapeake Bay as an example of wasting resources. So he's right there. Then all caps, he writes, stay home. And then, of course, I say, wow, can I quote you for this convo on the podcast? And he said, of course. And I said, so now I'm trying to defend my choices to go fishing. And I ask him, is it safe for me to walk to the river and catch a fish? Is it safer for me to do that than to go to the store for meat? And he says, if you're walking down there there away from others, I like that better. So that's Dr. Gray's point on staying home. The long and short of it is you should stay home, especially if you're just stay home. But it's really hard to, and I think you're relatively safe going fishing, but maybe boating and traveling a long distance, do things close to home, I think is the best advice. On a personal level, I think it's better than going to the store. The store is probably the most dangerous place you could be right now. And of course, we've all been cleared to drive to the store, so why not drive to the river? That's my own personal thing. But the doctor says, stay home. And his website is mededmedia.com. mededmedia.com, and I'll share links in our show notes. And we thank Dr. Ryan Gray for for his input here at the Fish Nerds podcast. And we're happy that he did that. But yeah, I think he's right. Stay home. This episode brought to you by Olukai, and we're happy that they're sponsoring us. At Olukai, we handcraft Hawaiian-inspired footwear, finding inspiration in Hawaiian culture and craftsmanship. Fishing is at the heart of Hawaiian culture today, just as it has been for centuries. Generations of fishermen and women expertly cast from rocky shorelines and sandy beaches. They spearfish, throw nets, fly fish, and navigate their boats beyond the reef and into the deep blue in search of the next big catch. No matter how they do it, there's an attention to detail and respect for the ocean that guides their passion. At Olukai, they believe in the same attention to detail when crafting the highest quality shoes and sandals built for every type of marine environment. Alukai's water-friendly No Heya Muko slip-on shoe features razor sipping with non-marking rubber for extra grip on the deck, the dock, or the rocks, and designed for easy on-off barefoot wear. And when it comes to sandals that perform, Alukai's new Ulela provides the comfort and durability of a sneaker for those long days on the boat or on the shore. And they sent me some pairs and my wife, and we've been wearing around the yard. We had nice weather finally, and they are terrific. I often forget I'm wearing shoes at all, which is great. I can't wait to wear them on my boat once mean old Dr. Gray lets me go out on the boat again. But we really appreciate them. You can go to alukai.com/fishnerds to find out more. OLUKAI.com/fishnerds. And of course, we will put links in the show notes at fishnerds.com. And it really means a lot if you go and click through to their website from ours, because that means that we are having an impact. Another way you can help the Fish Nerds is by going to patreon.com/fishnerds and helping us fund our show. It really makes a difference. I've lost all my employment, as you've heard last week, and the only reason this job is still floating is because people have been going to patreon.com/fishnerds and giving us $5 a month. And we're going to start doing a special episode every month for our Patreon listeners. It may be a live show, it may be some extra stuff that they didn't use. In fact, for example, I'll give you an example. Just the other night, I interviewed some libertarians from the free state movement. And I didn't love the interview, but you might. I didn't like it good enough to put on the actual podcast, but I got this great information that you might want to know about. I'm not a free stater or a libertarian, but I was interested in their point of view on some fisheries issues. I didn't like how the interview came out. They were nice enough to come on, and I have some good audio enough, and so I'm going to put that on a Patreon-only feed. So if you want to get that extra material, patreon.com/fishnerds for that. Now, without further ado, we're going to jump into the meat of the show, and we have Rich Ross, who is a cephalopod expert, on the show tonight. I first heard him on Penn Jillette's podcast, which was called Penn's Sunday School, and I heard him on there, it must have been like 6 or 7 years ago, talking about giant squid sperm, and I thought, this is my kind of human. I like him. And then I learned he was a juggler, and then I bumped into the amazing James Frank, who also has a lot of good content in his brain and also is a juggler. And I used to be a juggler, so I thought, oh my gosh, perfect. Your chocolates and my peanut butter. And then, even better than that, I was hanging out with Rhett Talbot up in Maine one day, and I was talking to him, and he says, I asked him a question about squids, and he goes, let me text my friend, Rich Ross. And I went, you're friends with Rich Ross? So I was not friends with Rich at this point, and then next thing you know, we're friends, and he came on the show, and so that's kind of the history. I'm a huge fan of his work. Now, Rich makes a podcast called the Skimmate, and So I thought having podcasters on my show, I get the best audio anyone can get. Turns out quarantine at home means he's not in his studio with his good equipment. So I had to get him recording on his iPhone, which makes me want to punch people in the throat. And then the amazing James calls in using the onboard microphone on his computer. You're a podcaster. Let's get this right next time. But anyway, I forgive you guys. I still love you. And next time you come on my show, get a freaking microphone. But the content's good. Have a great time with this, you guys. I had a great time, and we'll be back again.
I'm so excited because it turns out that James lives literally 5 minutes from me. And I've been looking for people to juggle with. I've been even thinking about going over to the Rhythmics and telling them I'll do a night where an open juggling night.
Let's do it.
But it might be more fun just to come over to Crab Cove and juggle.
Right, just do it on the lawn right here. I mean, that's what I do.
So,
in the winter, when it's 60 degrees outside in California, no one else. Don't come here.
Sounds
everyone
like
else in the Northeast. Stay where you are.
Let me ask you a question: if you're juggling and you're passing clubs 6 feet away from each other, are you socially distancing?
No.
Or what kind of
no, because you're passing germs on the clubs.
Equipment do you have to have on your hands?
I guess gloves.
Gloves?
Gloves would do it.
Yeah.
But the clubs are spinning.
Yeah.
So they're shooting.
I think it'd be cool if we juggled bottles of Purell.
That's
we could juggle open bottles of Purell with them spinning, and then we could light them on fire.
As soon as people aren't sheltering in place, someone's doing that. The first street show after this will have someone juggling Purell.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, San Francisco's right across the bay. We could just go and make our next million.
Yeah. I totally made $1 million when I was juggling in San Francisco. It was great. No.
Rich, did you do street performing?
Yeah, I did street performing. Started street performing, and then as a solo act, and then filled in for John Park in the American Dream comedy team, and worked with Scotty Meltzer. And then John was moving, and Scotty and I worked well together, and so I stepped into that, and we did shows for 15 years, 12, 15 years, something like that.
When you were street performing, did you have a go-to line for like handling the hecklers?
There was a bunch of go-to lines. It all depends on the context and what the hecklers are doing and what the context of the show is, right? If it's
okay, Clay's a really good heckler. I'm going to let him heckle you, and you're going to have to.
I've never heckled a performer.
Oh, come on, Clay. I know you can do it.
I've been on stage. No chance. No chance I could do that to anybody.
You can talk shit, Clay. I know you can.
Context. I don't think I could just do it.
The best hecklers are the ones that think they're helping the show.
Oh God.
And you're like, please stop helping. Please stop helping. So we did a bunch of street shows and comedy clubs, and then we ended up doing a lot of corporate work, which is way more money, but decidedly less fun.
Corporate juggling. That's a thing.
Yeah. So we started doing, breakout sessions or after dinner shows. And then we're asked to do a trade show. And the trade show is where a lot of the work came in, a lot of the repeat work and a lot of the money. And so it was great. But, we did that for 7 years, 8 years. After 7 years of 8 years of performing one show, rehearsing the next week's show, writing the week's show after that, and doing the initial consultation for the show after that, it gets tiring. I mean, it sounds stupid because it's like, that's a lot of work and it's good work and it's great money, or it was great money. It's not anymore. Thank you, 2008. Now it's just good money. But that got tiring, and I was away from home all the time, and it was a lot. I mean, it's great, but it was a lot. It was really fun while I was doing it. And we opened for, Tanya Tucker and Sawyer Brown and the Smothers Brothers and John Mellencamp. And
wait a minute,
an opening for the Smothers Brothers.
Stop.
It's kind of like, I'll just quit now because we're hanging out with the Smothers Brothers and Weird Al Yankovic. It's like, we're done.
And they don't need you.
No, but they hired us. We opened for Weird Al twice. He was great fun.
Oh man, I love Weird Al. Yeah, that's so cool.
He was really nice, and so was the Smothers Brothers.
I'm sure they were. Now, I have a question because you mentioned all these country artists you opened for. Is that common to hire jugglers for country artist openers? Is that normal?
There's a lot of fairs, and fairs tend to connect you with country singers.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? Let's see. Tanya Tucker, we did twice for her, and that was at fairs. Sawyer Brown was at a fair.
News, fish in the news. Everybody loves their fish in the news.
So it worked out really good. All right. This is a true story. This is a few years old, but I like the story. This is from thesun.co.uk. And the headline is Squid Shock Horror. Woman's tongue becomes pregnant after eating squid sperm and raw calamari. A woman from South Korea was left in severe pain. Sperm was squirted into her tongue as she ate seafood. That's the headline.
Yeah.
Tell me if you've heard this one before, guys.
This one's not a lie, though.
Yeah, a 63-year-old woman's tongue became pregnant after sperm from a raw squid she was eating ended up in her mouth, according to a medical journal. So
Yeah, except no one became pregnant. That's ridiculous. But
her tongue had babies.
Her tongue had babies. What would that even? Tongue babies.
Tongue babies.
Is that like spiders coming out of a mass of spiders? What tongue baby?
That's tongue babies. That's where squid comes from.
Okay.
Yeah, the woman from South Korea was in severe pain after squid injected sperm into the tissue of her mouth, and she was rushed to the hospital. Doctors took a look inside her mouth and made the stomach-churning discovery of 12 small white spindle-shaped bug-like sperm bags embedded in her tongue and gums.
The doctors knew they were sperm bags. They saw spermatophores and were like, "That's a squid sperm." Is that how it went down?
Rich, what do you think?
I was there when it happened.
They called you, didn't they?
And I said, "Those are sperm bags."
What is a sperm bag?
That's the technical term.
What is a sperm bag? Yeah. Wait, what was this news source of yours?
The Sun.
I'm sorry. What?
Oh, there's a paper
What
on this.
Sun?
It's actually a couple
real.
papers on this. This is not a one-off. This happens from time to time. But it's not. It's a fresh squid and not cooked very well, or might be raw. And you bite into the right place, you can make the spermatophores trigger. And in some squid, that's kind of like a spring-loaded delivery. So she bit. Mostly it was in her gums. I think there was some in their tongue, but it was mostly in the gums. And this cute thing that's packed with sperm shoots out and jams into whatever tissue is there. In this case, it was her gums.
So tell me about squid sperm. I want to hear more about this. So I got to know like the structure of the sperm. Like, what is it about it that makes it penetrate tissues? Like, what is
the sperm is in this thing called spermatophore, and the sperms are all coiled up in there. So what happens is this, because squids are assholes. They're some of them.
I want a t-shirt.
Really like there's and you're going to get this we're going to give all this a 63% chance of being completely accurate. There
that's good.
Somebody has found spermatophores in weird places on squids. In areas that have nothing to do with reproduction. And that's from this weird mating thing and how these spermatophores are delivered. So and they come in different shapes depending on the animal, the cephalopod, but they jam in, so they can't be gotten rid of. And so they jam into flesh. So you'll find it in the flesh of the squid, not just near the reproductive organs.
Now, do they work their way through the flesh to find a way to get pregnant, or they stick in wherever they land?
They stick in wherever they land. We assume that those are accidents. And God, it would be so funny if that's how it happened. There's just like
let's talk about
squid.
But I got more questions. You're going too fast. So when a mom and dad squid love each other very much, and they get together, right, and they after dinner they have a glass of wine, and then how do they mate?
Everyone it seems wants to get more fish in the
Like, how does a squid? How does a squid do it?
We'll have to go.
Yeah, I've seen Japanese squid porn.
We're gonna have to go back a step because there's of course you've seen Japanese squid
research.
They don't each other very much at all.
Now tell me how they do it.
How they do it quickly and violently. They're generally not friends.
Oh,
so squids have 8 arms and 2 tentacles.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between an arm and a tentacle is that generally the arms have suckers up and down higher lengths, and tentacles are smooth except for the testicular club, which has got hooks and suckers on it, and suckers that have got teeth on them, and they're just a vicious predator with all kinds of crazy stuff. A nautilus has tentacles as well. They have like 90 of them, but they're very different because nautilus are weird. So, and the octopus have 8 arms as well, no tentacles, and cuttlefish have 8 arms and 2 tentacles. How the sexing works is the male cephalopod has a modified arm, and it's if you're looking from the top, it's the 3rd arm on the right. But that's a detail no one cares about. That's where it is. Care. And it's a groove that runs along the entire arm that ends in a ligula, and the ligula actually has erectile tissue on it. And the ligula helps place the spermatophore in the place where the male wants it to be.
Right. So hang on. So the scientific name for that arm is the boner arm.
The boner arm.
Right?
The boner arm.
Okay. I want to make sure I'm keeping up. Huh?
Yeah.
I would just like to point out here that I just learned a new word, ligula. Now when I was in college and we were taking invertebrate zoology, we did the dissection of the oyster, which was the part that I remember most, and the part that was passed around the lab sort of as a joke, was the labial palp.
Oh.
Do you know what a labial palp is?
I've got 2 of them. No. Please tell us about the labial palp.
Well, it's the part of any bivalve that actually sorts, and I could be
They're
wrong.
all bivalves in college, but they grow out of it.
My best way. It's the part of the on the outside of the stomach that actually sorts out the good food and makes it go to the stomach and diverts and gets rid of the pseudo feces, or at least turns things into pseudo feces, which is another really cool word.
Poo.
Fake poo, which is just the stuff it doesn't want to eat. Pretty neat. But the labial palp, we thought the word labial palp was so hilarious that we would just literally flick them at each other across the lab table.
Flicking the labial palp.
Wait, I'm right. I gotta write this down because we're online. Yeah. We got stuff to do.
So ligula is the boner part of the arm?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So labial palps and ligulas, those are totally interesting.
And then
words
at the
to me. I think
other end, inside, there's a penis that makes the spermatophore and puts it onto the groove, which is called the hectocotylus. It's a hectocotylized arm. And that groove works through peristaltisis and moves the sperm packet down the arm. The same way you swallow.
Peristalsis, do you remember the Mr. Wizard episode where the girl goes upside down, sort of does a headstand, and she has to eat an apple?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
That's exactly it.
So it's the same.
So squid can do the money shot if they're upside down because of peristaltisis, the miracle of peristaltisis. And so when you want to know when squid mate, how they mate. So that's some technical stuff. Squid generally mate beak to beak or face to face. And the male takes that 3rd arm and wiggles it into the mantle cavity, to the reproductive area, we think. And
Wait, did you say third
the
arm?
third arm on the right side, the hectocotylized arm.
Oh, sorry.
Keep
Got it.
up,
Okay.
man. Come
Got
on.
Yeah. And puts the sperm packets in there. And octopus do the same thing. They don't all mate face to face like that. There's only the one that we did most of the research on, the larger Pacific striped octopus, that mates face to face like that. Most of the other time, the male octopus will be as far away from the female as possible, either holding on to her from the mantle, which is the bag at the top that people think of their head, but it's not, it's their torso. See, dream crusher. And they'll gently reach in. And then some even mate really far apart, and with just the arm across to the female, because sometimes in that species in particular, the female will take autoerotic asphyxiation for the male, or no, just erotic asphyxiation. There's no auto; it's the female choking the male, and sometimes they choke him to death, and then sometimes they eat him.
Oh, that's good.
And then there are
Wait, how do you choke?
some octopuses.
How do you
Just
choke a
write them
squid?
down.
Now I have a
Write
bit
them
of-
down, James. Write them down.
Yeah.
There are some species of octopus that actually sever the hectocotylized arm, and it goes off and finds a female and impregnates the female. That fertilizes the female. Well,
The arm all by itself has enough brain power to find the female, get under the mantle, deliver the sperm package.
there's different stories about that. This is mostly, we hear about this with the blanket octopus or the Argonaut, and there have been blanket octopuses found with 3 or 4 arms in there from different males. So it's unclear. Yeah, they're just a collector. Oh, and then they can choose the sperm. They totally can select the sperm they want to use. You probably, I don't know. This is another area that's not studied well enough. So
Wow.
not quite sure what the female Argonaut does, because they're so weird, right? For listeners who don't know, the Argonaut is called the paper nautilus. It's an octopus, and the female makes a shell that looks like looks like a nautilus shell in shape, but is not. It's much safer. I mean, much softer. And they control the buoyancy of that shell by changing the size of the air bubble that's inside of it. What? How crazy
We've
is
done
that?
so much.
It's insane.
I know.
So I don't really
Well, that's the essential way that a
exactly
BCD works on a scuba dive. Same
exactly.
idea.
So
But we had no idea until a few years ago that that's how it was, how the buoyancy was dealt with.
All right.
But a chambered nautilus is different. How's a chambered nautilus?
Chambered nautilus has a hard shell, and it's got different chambers in that shell. And I'm forgetting all the terminology on that, but they can pump gas out of the chambers to control their buoyancy.
So isn't that essentially the same thing, though?
Yeah, except one is a body that they control that with their body, and the other one is they're changing the size of an actual air bubble in a shell, right? Because the nautilus needs the shell to live. Without that shell, if you pull the nautilus out of its shell, it dies. But you could pull the Argonaut out of its paper nautilus, and it will still live. Yeah, so it's totally different physiology. What else were you asking? That was like a long diatribe about
Oh, my
sex.
other question was how do you choke a squid?
You reach in and you crush its esophagus, or you stop so you can cut off. It's actual choking, not strangling. Which is it? Choking? No, strangling. I should have said strangling.
Right.
Yeah,
There's a difference.
choking is stopping the flow of oxygen, and strangling is actually crushing down the. Is that right? One is the other.
Yeah, you choke on a hot dog and you get strangled by
Right.
a murderer.
Right. You get
A
strangled.
murderer is not pushing a hot
You
dog
get
into your
strangled by your secret lover. No, you get choked by your secret lover, and you get strangled by your spouse.
No.
No.
Strangulation. So choking is like obstruction. So if you obstruct the esophagus, that's choking. Strangulation is crushing it.
There we go. And I was
Yeah.
I was making a terrible joke about that your spouse would want to kill you,
Yeah,
whereas
I'm
your
sure it's
lover
true.
wouldn't.
And those of us who are stuck with our spouses here now because of this sequestering, we are finding this to be true. So,
Hey, baby, let's play cephalopod tonight.
oh yeah, I got the third arm. It's ready.
It's on.
Wait, so are we doing fish in the news still?
Well,
We needed
Somehow
this as
we've-
background to this lady with
Yeah.
the spermatophores in her mouth.
Right. How did she get the spermatophores in her mouth again? She chewed
eating
on a piece of-
undercooked squid.
Yeah.
So I want to know. So these squids have these spermatophores, and the sperms are all very pointy and sharp. What's the evolutionary advantage to having that shape of a sperm? And do other animals also have that?
Well, it's a sperm packet,
Yeah.
right? So
packet.
the advantage is you can jam a bunch of sperm packets into her and then run away,
Okay. So here you go, lady. Bye.
and they're going to stay in her. Right, that's what you don't. They can flush their mantles at well and rinse out sperm if they don't like you or they don't like their mate. So anything you can do to make it sticky and stay in there is less likely she'll be able to get rid of it.
So they're barbed.
Yeah, they're and there's glue. There's all kinds of stuff going on in there that people are researching now to see what applications they could have for us.
So, but basically, they want to make sure the sperm stay in there, and they get to spread the gene pool, which is
Exactly.
what animals do. Fascinating.
Exactly.
I thought so, and that was the story I first heard you tell. I think on Penn Sunday School back in 2012.
Wow.
And that's when I first heard you tell that story. I was like, I have to get this guy on the show. And so now it's been 8 years, and finally, full circle. I get my story.
Yay! Thank you.
Hey,
I-
you did great.
After that episode, I did a little research and seeing if I could find squid that would be fresh enough for it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did you?
I would do it myself because that's really stupid. And
Right.
back then I liked really stupid. Now I'm liking really
Mhm.
stupid again. Now that I quit my job,
Yeah.
but I couldn't find any. It's much easier closer to the source.
So could you go out and catch a squid out in the bay there and just do it? Just take a bite of them?
Probably. Are there squid in the bay? I don't know what's going on with that. I mean,
You know, I've caught a cabezon with a squid in its gut, but that was out by the
Yeah.
Golden Gate Bridge. They're here, but I don't think they come too far in. It's still an estuary. It's not quite
yeah.
the ocean.
And the squids that come up here, I mean, we have the Doryteuthis, which used to be loligo, the market squid. That's down in Monterey more. I don't think we get them up here. That's where they go and mate like crazy. So I guess I could get down there and try to grab a male and do it. But the other squid we get up here is like the Humboldt squid, which is a big, mean predator thing.
But that's also pretty rare, aren't they? Only on the Union
Yeah,
Current,
I think
usually?
they slow down. They slow down.
Yeah.
They're not up north as much. And so we'll see how that.
A few years back, it was pretty crazy. A few years back when they were catching them, I was hearing about boats going out of Emeryville to go out for them, and people were bringing them like a dozen. Which I don't know what you do. Like those things are huge. What do they weigh? Like
They
20
can
pounds?
they can be 6 feet long.
Something absurd. Yeah, like what do you like if you catch even one? What do you do with it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Very big
geez.
So you
calamari.
get some sperm packets.
Yeah.
I have a Humboldt squid head in alcohol in a bucket outside, and a bunch of beaks
Of course you do.
from a
course you
fisherman
do.
guy I knew who would bring them to me.
God.
And then I just never got around to being able to go out and go squid fishing.
Right. And
Well, we should do that.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
something we need to do.
That'd be great.
just a
Next
sidebar
opportunity.
for all those fish nerds listening. Rich also managed to get married. So there's that. So even though he's collecting squids and
She likes
it
that.
happen. Yeah.
She calls me her pet mad scientist.
Yeah, well, congratulations, jackpot.
Thank you.
So-
I agree. God, and she married me when I was a juggler. Ugh.
Really?
Wow. Yeah.
Wow. That's brave.
That's see, there's hope for all of us nerds out there.
Yes.
Oh my
Nerds
God.
are good.
Congratulations. They are good. They do. Well,
Right?
nerds are who do things.
Yes.
We're not the ones watching the TV and the sports all the time. We're playing and having fun. So let's do some more news here. Got some couple more stories here. Squid's, this is from Wired magazine. Squid's gene editing superpowers may unlock human cures. Researchers found that the cephalopod is the only creature that can edit its RNA outside the nucleus. It's a tool that may one day help genetic medicine. So, gene editing techniques.
That's out of my realm of knowledge, but it seems very promising. It may end up being my realm of knowledge in 2 years, but it is not now.
Not now. Well, they say CRISPR-based technologies aim to cure human disease by altering the genetic code of our DNA. For nearly every animal on Earth, any changes made to the DNA are transmitted from cell nucleus to messenger RNA to the cytoplasm and the part of the cell that's the part of the cell that makes the proteins. But one animal species, squid, used by bait as fishermen and as food by bigger sea creatures, has already figured out how to edit its genetic code in a way that helps scientists working on gene editing. And this has helped them with making drugs and treatments. And scientists at the Marine Biological Lab in Woods Hole, Massachusetts, and their colleagues reported it's an unusual method of editing genes, and it has something to do with the squid's behavior in the ocean. It works by the massive tweaking of its nervous system. But the headline kind of implies that they're doing it on purpose.
Yeah, don't read headlines. I mean, read headlines, but ignore them. I'm sorry, James, what?
Here's an interesting thing it points out a little further down here. It's saying that they found that the RNA editing takes place in the squid's axon, and they have very long and large axons. So it seems like it's like an adaptation for the fact that it's got huge cells, and therefore it essentially says, editing their RNA outside the nucleus, the squid can potentially change protein function much closer to the body.
Really cool, right? They have huge axons, which makes them so attractive as a experimental animal.
Right. And for those listeners who don't know what an axon is, that is a nerve cell, right?
I thought it was a video game in the 80s.
I thought it was a hairband.
No, but it's actually quite interesting. What are the other animals that I can think of that have big nerve cells? Like aptasia? Isn't that? No, not aptasia. The what's that? Not aptasia. The sea hare, the California sea hare, is used for a lot of experiments because they have huge nerve cells.
Yeah, aplesia.
Aplesia. Yeah, aptasia is that's a real
They're
problem.
related to squids and octopus. Yeah.
Are they?
Cephalopods are mollusks.
They're mollusks. That's right. They're mollusks.
So they're.
Gosh, you can tell. I swear I did not fail that invert zoology class.
Well, you got all that in your head bouncing around. It's got to get
from 20 years
out.
ago.
You know.
Yeah, serious. But do you remember? Did you see the wash up of the California sea hares at all years ago?
I saw some of it. This was more south, wasn't it?
Oh man. No, it was here. It was in the bay. It was huge. And actually, if I can find one of the stories about it, it was really incredible. They were everywhere. That was like 2016, I want to say, and it's all related to basically just warm water temperatures.
Yeah.
There were so darn many of them everywhere. I got a pretty good video I shared on YouTube of one that was out here in the bay, like right outside the back door, and had out of nowhere, like a little crab just sort of like scuttles out from between its like from inside its mantle. It was unreal, like this giant sea slug, like a foot long. And I'm just sitting there taking a video of it, and literally like this little tiny shore crab just like flips out and goes. Out of nowhere. It was like a hitchhiker. Wow. It was so cool. But it actually made like international news because they were washing up on the shore and people thought they were actually human body parts. They literally thought they were here, CBS San Francisco. Return of the Blob, the big purple sea slugs wash ashore in East Bay. And in Alameda, right here, giant sea slugs have been washing up on some Bay Area beaches in unusual numbers this summer. And some folks who aren't sure what the creatures are actually calling police, thinking they've made a grisly discovery. I literally had the park police were called for what they thought was a human liver washed up on the beach.
Wow, that's awesome.
International news.
That's awesome.
Yeah, right up there with what were they calling the penis worms?
The penis worms. I forgot the name of the fish, but the animal. But there's some kind of cucumber.
Yeah.
I see cucumbers are washing up a few.
Lugworm
or something. One of those. Yeah, some sort of
People are
the
funny.
whole beaches.
I love it.
People are awesome.
And people in Alameda
Anyway.
are the best, right?
Right. Oh yeah, yeah. Like anything washes up on the beach, it's like totally unnatural and awful and
Scary.
Yeah, I can tell you all sorts of stories.
Yeah, I
about that.
kite out there a lot, and if your kite hits the water, they will sometimes call the emergency responders. I had emergency responders come out to me once, and in the boat, from the shore, and they're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm standing. I'm not."
Yeah.
I'm
The water
standing.
here is so shallow. Like, yeah, people don't know that. Like, they don't realize at low tide, you can walk out like a half mile, right? And the water is so shallow, like it's like 3 feet deep. The whole bay, on average, is only 12 feet deep, but right against this mudflat area where we are, there's like no water whatsoever. So there have been the reason why that's happening, and you know this, you know about the history of the guy who committed suicide. There was a guy who really went out into the bay, walked out, and just sat in the water until he got hypothermia.
It's a boring way to kill yourself.
But he was, I know exactly, but he was
for a long
there.
time.
Like he wasn't for a long time. And police wouldn't go rescue him. Firefighters wouldn't go rescue him. No one had water training, which, whichever side of the coin you're on, it's a reasonable thing for someone who's not trained in water rescue to not want to put themselves at risk. So, but it was really sad, and it made a big impression on the local community. And now anytime someone sees someone out in the water that's just not moving, or like in this case, a kite surfer who has their kite down in the water and they look like they're, from a distance, maybe they're struggling or they're not getting their kite back.
Exactly.
This happens. It happens all the time.
I haven't been to the Bay Area since I was a kid. I lived on Treasure Island when I was little.
Wow.
And it was a Coast Guard base when I was a kid. And we used to go shark fishing in the bay all the time. And then we would go to the beaches over in San Francisco. And I was afraid to go in the water because the first time I went swimming there, I went in the water and there was this huge shark washed up on the beach. And I wouldn't go in the water. But I had no idea how shallow it was. And it might have been probably wasn't huge. I was fourth grader, so it might have been normal size shark.
It was a shark.
It was a shark. I knew that.
Sharks are scary to fourth graders.
Wasn't going in. All right, we got one more story here I think we need to talk about. This is really important. This is big news. This is from the Worcester news.co.uk from England again. And they've got a lot of strict Puritan rules about porn there. The headline is, Pershore man denies having octopus porn. So a man has denied possessing extreme pornography featuring sex acts with a dog, 2 goats, a chicken, an octopus, and a horse. Owen Good of...
Where do you find this stuff?
I love the Google. Owen Good of Desjardins Way, Pershore, denied 2 counts of possessing extreme pornography when he appeared at Worcester Crown Court in Tuesday. The 25-year-old, he's young for this, the 25-year-old says the images were sent to him via WhatsApp, and he did not know what they were until after they were automatically saved to his messaging service. He denied possessing extreme pornography, 5 moving images, and a compilation of videos which portrayed an explicit, realistic way and likely to result in serious injury, an offense alleged to have taken place. I'm curious what it looked like. Not that curious. Not that curious. He also denied a further account of possessing extreme pornography, which portrayed activity with live animals such as the octopus. So, curious about this.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to talk about this because of the witness relocation stuff.
They changed your accent and everything.
Yeah. Don't call me Owen.
You've spent a lot of time with octopuses. Do you ever just think about them? Like, hey, you know what? That's not so bad. Yeah.
Hey, girl.
Quite the mantle you got there.
Oh man, look at you changing colors, baby. I'm so lonely. I'm just gonna put
wrap your arms around me, baby.
No, that's never.
I am sure. Oh man, I'm sure you've heard stories of people doing weird things with octopi.
Yeah,
octopi.
There's octopuses. Either one.
Is it really? It's
yeah. Well,
never been.
It can be either.
Oh.
Or so it's a Greek word.
Really?
So technically, it should be octopodes.
Right. That's what I've been saying.
But it's also octopuses is just the plural of that. That's of octopus. So that's fine. And then octopi is Latin, but it turns out when you bring a word from another language into English, you're allowed to Latinize it. So all of them are fine. If you call them octopodes, people will hit you.
But it's fun to say.
It's so much fun to say. But yeah, octopuses is more technically proper than octopi.
Yeah,
Got it. Yeah, I've never wanted to have sex with them.
No, me either.
But I've seen some, because I've been in animals for so long. I'm sorry, involved with animals, given the phraseology matters. Because I've been involved with animals, I get and a performer. I end up getting a lot of weird crap sent to me in the email, and people do weird sex stuff with all kinds of animals. Yeah, loaches and botillas and wow, which I would always think those would be sticky. They have sticky fins. It's like, wow, you better put them in the right way, because
I don't want to know.
You want to know.
No, I really don't. That sounds. And
that happens with octopus a lot.
And I think people don't think about they think about the one-way directional. They don't think about removing things after,
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this totally went there. Okay.
I'm just saying. Well, that was Fish in the News. I hope everybody enjoyed that.
I'll take this opportunity to address one or two other popular news things about cephalopods.
Please.
They're not aliens. The scientists didn't really say they were alien. That's another headline problem. They're not aliens.
All the time.
They just have crazy ass DNA, and
that they can manipulate on purpose.
On purpose, it seems like. There was one other one I've forgotten it now. Well, that's a lame RNA as well.
Well, the common my daughter says she won't eat octopuses because they appear smart to her.
Okay, well, time out a second. I have something about this. Have you been to what's the restaurant over at South Shore Center? The really famous Italian one.
Ciboco.
Ciboco. Have you had his octopus dish that he makes? He makes an octopus, like roasted octopus and potatoes?
I haven't, because I've been pretty plant-based for the last 4 or 5 years.
Oh, okay. I had never had octopus, I'd say, and someone suggested that if I wanted to try it, that would be the one to try.
Yeah.
And it was good. Like it was actually very good. I was impressed. I thought it was going to be much more rubbery, but the way he prepared it, it was really nice and soft and good. And then I got it in my head that I could do the same thing. I mean, as if I'm a professional chef, right? I got myself an octopus and of questionable origin, and because I think I bought it in Chinatown. And no, I got it there's the Latino grocery store that I go to over in Oakland every once in a while. Anyway, did not come out the same at all. Like totally chewy. And in all honesty, it felt weird to eat it. Like I don't know what it was about it. I mean, I've handled octopodes multiple times, living ones, and I took care of a couple in my aquarium years. But honestly, like something about it, just there are very few foods that I'm not into. Like I don't eat oysters. I think oysters are gross. It's just like one of the only foods that I won't eat.
What?
But now I think octopus is joined that list, and I don't really.
Did you have a problem with the cooked one? Did you feel the same way, or did you only feel the same way after your attempt?
I felt the same way with the one that was made in the restaurant to a degree. I was like, this is good enough to try it again, and maybe even try to make it myself. But there was just, after I made it myself, it was a little like, I don't know if it was just the way I prepared it and I just didn't do a good enough job. But I feel the same way about oysters. Like it doesn't matter how they're prepared. Like fried is the only way I'll eat them, and even then I'm just kind of like, ugh. But
that's just you just don't like it.
There it is.
It's not an ethical thing.
But I think it's also like, I don't know. It's going to sound weird, but like, yeah, I don't think of it as like a sentient being. Like, obviously, every animal I've eaten my entire life was a living animal, right? But there's something about an octopus that for me, like, I don't know. It's not like I'm disgusted by it. It's like I feel bad.
I think Rich is on to something when he says you just didn't like it. It sounds like you don't like octopus. It's like they taste okay, and that's about it. And you know what tastes really good?
Right.
Everything else tastes better.
That's what it is. It's like, right. It tastes okay, and therefore I'm not really willing to kill one to eat it. You know what I mean? It's nothing great as far as the
because you're not used to it. If you were raised eating them, you might have a different thought.
Like cows.
Or if you were starving.
Yeah. The intelligence thing is.
I mean, I have a house of cheese.
I'm sorry.
No,
the intelligence thing is the one that's more interesting to me, because that's what people like to cite. Is that I'm not going to eat it because it's smart, as they eat their pulled pork sandwich. You know, it's
because pigs are smart. Right?
I think pigs are demonstrably smarter than octopus. So
and we know that the smarter the animal, the better they taste.
That's right.
That's fact.
That's why. Yeah. Have you had the long pig at Trabuco?
No. What?
You look up long pig first before you take this seriously. No, long pig is what cannibals refer to as human meat. Is the long pig.
Oh.
I'm not entirely against that.
Learning new things all the time.
Yeah. So there, and on the intelligence, there was that's where I'm really a dream crusher, because we don't know. I'm not saying they're not intelligent, but things like this make me crazy. There was an article about a public aquarium talking about their giant Pacific octopus that had they said it had the intelligence of a 6-year-old child. And you know, at first it started as a 1-year-old and 2-year-old, 3-year-old. Now it's 6-year-old. And I kind of wrote to them and went, "You're telling the public that you've got something as smart as a 6-year-old child in a box for its whole life. That's not going to work. Don't. It's inaccurate, number one, and number two, don't do that. Because if you had a puppy in a box for its whole life, people would be really angry."
Well, and comparing human intelligence to animal intelligence it's we are animals, but it's such a different thing.
Now, I'm not at all advocating bad care. You know, I think all care should be, you know, you took this animal out of the wild. You should be responsible. You should be sustainable. You should make sure it's living its good life.
Right. Well, let me hang on. Let me help you with something, Rich, because you just said something. You were talking about keeping a 6-year-old in a box being bad form for the aquarium for marketing. What if they said, "Don't worry, it's dumb. We're going to keep it in a box for 6 years"?
Well, yeah. I think. Well, now we're getting to the ethical part, which is what my degree is in. So now you're screwed. Perfect. You have to listen to this. And that's the favorite articles I've written are on the ethics. So the ethics of fish in particular is bizarre, given how we treat them as a society, right? So you get all these places, these charter boats, that when you come back, they nail your catch to a board while it's kind of still alive, and then you stand under it and take pictures. So if you can do that, I think we're on not good ethical ground talking about that, you know, that fish, you know, needs 5 feet of swimming room. It's a weird place. It's a weird place. Now, I absolutely think that, you know, any fish you keep should be ethically kept. You shouldn't get a giant fish for a tiny tank. But at the same time, given that it's okay to pull a fish out of the water and throw it on the deck and let it exsanguinate by itself, no one blinks an eye. I certainly have no problem feeding fish to other fish. So
fair enough.
Right. I mean, if it's being used for food, I get that. I mean, I try to dispatch my catch as quickly as I can. You know, the problem I have as an educator is, like, I learned how to keep fish as a kid. And of course, like anyone who does that is going to kill an animal. Like I guarantee you, everyone who's kept a fish has flushed one down the drain, right? More than one, I'm sure. But I have a hard time with being where I am in my career as an educator who wants to encourage people to learn about this stuff, but has to also say, like, hey, respect the animals. And how do you mitigate that? How do you balance the, like, you can't learn about it without hands-on activity, and you can't have the hands-on activity without some negative consequence. You know what I mean? Like one of the hardest things about my job right now is that the state regulates just so heavily on use of things like seine nets, even for educational purposes. Like as a kid, growing up on the North Shore of Long Island, I would go out swimming in the Long Island Sound, or taking out a big, like 6 or 8 foot seine net. I remember just taking it whenever I wanted to and going through the marshes and picking up all the stuff, like holding eels and all this other stuff. But here, I have to fill out a permit. I have to submit it to the state 2 weeks in advance. I have to then report back after we've done the seine netting in the bay here, what we caught, what we released. And it's all got to be, we actually have to explain how we're going to handle the animals, like with wet hands, and keep them, in the water as much as possible. So I struggle with the accessibility, or I guess in a sense, like lack of accessibility to the water that we're essentially instilling on this generation of people who is growing up like in this hands-off sort of atmosphere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's a struggle, and it's super complicated, because the bay was in trouble and still in some trouble, but was in so much trouble for so long that they want to make sure everything's okay. But at the same time, you can get a fishing permit and kill whatever the hell you want. So it's a weird thing. And then you look at how our society treats animals in general. And so, saying protect this animal, now let's go to the store and kill a chicken. It's
You go to stores and kill chickens?
Yeah, you should come out to the Bay Area.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Actually, he's not kidding. I know
2 places.
Wow.
I know one place that'll do it for you. But that's all of our food. So it's weird. So I think how do we do it is we keep talking about it is the only thing I can think doing. The other part is I think people need to be responsible when they get animals as pets or when they're going out to seine. So I think it's important that people be careful and treat the animals well.
Right.
And I think when you get a pet, you better have done your damn, learning. And so it minimizes the chances. I also think nowadays people with pet fish, you should be doing your first year at least with captive bred animals.
Right. Yeah. Otherwise, it's totally irresponsible. And I read your article on this. You wrote back and forth with the guy in England about the ethics of aquarium keeping. I just read that this morning, and it's fascinating. It's actually a really good back and forth. But the argument that came up in that was who's responsible? Is it the people that are buying the stuff, or is it the industry itself? I was even going to go and start like growing corals in the Philippines as a way to sort of mitigate the like farmed corals, or try to get farm corals back into the system instead of wild stuff. That fell through. That's a whole other story. But the whole thing is like, like how do you sell things to people? It's like Petco. I actually can't stand going to Petco as an experienced aquarist. It drives me nuts every time I go in there. Oh, do you know that you can't mix this fish with that fish? And I'm just like, yeah, like I've been doing this since I was 5, right? Like, thanks. I'll take the betta. It's a female. It's not going to beat up on my, my other female betta. Like I've bred bettas. Have you? Yeah. like sometimes, but I don't want to be the jerk.
Yeah, you need a shirt that says, "Don't you know who I am?"
But that's the thing. Like I hate going there because it's very beginner. They do a good job of making sure, as far as I know, a lot of their stuff, if not all of it, is probably tank raised. And I know certain places that focus on it. But then, there's other places where that they're getting wild stuff, and that's a whole. I'd hate to be. I worked at one of those places that got wild stuff, and that was back. 20
we could do a whole hour on collection and techniques and
yeah.
stuff. We need to get to the end here pretty soon.
What?
Oh,
I know,
man.
but
That means we're coming back to do that hour.
we have to. But I do want to say my favorite way to catch fish is with cyanide, and that's how I do it. But that's me. So
Dynamite's good.
So.
Yeah. I like just diverting all the water permanently and letting them just dry out. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's good. Divert it to the cities that have none.
Perfect. So that's it. You've listened to a bunch of fish nerds when you should have been fishing. Special thanks to Rich Ross from the Skimmate podcast. The amazing James. I don't know what you do. Wally Pleasant for our theme music. Diane Bath Salts for our news music. And anyone who listened to this, I'm sorry.
So until next time, follow the code of fish nerds. Spawn early and often.
Never trust a free lunch with strings
And swim
attached.
against the current any chance you get.
Every chance
You did it.
get.
You guys made a Fish Nerds podcast. Thanks.
Woo!
Whether you're fly fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean, casting nets, fish nerds. Fish nerds. Fish nerds. It's a podcast.
Just for the halibut.
Fried in a basket or broiled in a pan. Eat it raw like you're in Siam. Fish nerds. Fish nerds. Fish nerds. It's a podcast.
Hey everybody, it's Crappie Hippie, your tree-hugging redneck from eastern Kansas, and I am so excited tonight. We're introducing a new feature on the Fish Nerds podcast. We've got the pond lady with us tonight, Amy Robeson. I don't know if you remember episode 226 where I interviewed Amy. I wanted to do a segment on pond management, and as she and I had been friends on Instagram for quite some time, I asked her to come on the show. And guess what? She got bit by the bug. She's totally infected. Oh, is that politically incorrect to say right now? Anyhow, she's a fish nerd for life, and she actually wanted to start submitting content. And of course, I encouraged her to submit content. So get ready to listen to her first segment. We're going to have contact information for Robeson Outdoor Solutions down in the show notes if you want to get hold of Amy, or you can get hold of her on Instagram at The Pond Lady. Alrighty, let's get ready to listen to some advice on how to start a pond from Amy Robeson, the Pond Lady. Welcome to The Pond Lady with your host, Oklahoma native Amy Robeson. The Pond Lady is an informational fish nerd series about pond management and how to conserve, enhance, and enjoy your private ecosystems. Brought to you by Robeson Outdoor Solutions. Robeson Outdoor Solutions consults on pond management, wildlife enhancement, habitat preservation, and animal removal from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And now, the Pond Lady.
Hello, this is Amy Robeson, the Pond Lady, coming to you from Oklahoma. Our friend John King, the lead-free crusader himself, asked me to record a segment for the show, and while we were discussing some potential topics, he asked me, "When do you stock your ponds in spring?" This, of course, led to quite a few other questions. So, to wrangle me in, he developed a scenario and a challenge. He asked me to give you the Pond Lady's top 5 rules for stocking a new pond and a brief scenario to outline each of these rules. Here is our scenario. A young married couple, probably millennials, have a son and a daughter that are in grade school. They've all lived in the city their entire lives. Now they want to get back to nature. So they've purchased a piece of property that has a creek arm on it. They know that their property is big enough to allow them to create a 3-acre pond by damming up this creek drainage. They also know that the average depth of the pond is approximately 4 feet, with 2 deeper holes that are approximately 10 feet. They have a sandy beach for swimming and a floating dock for fishing. So, the pond itself has been full since fall, and now the couple would like to stock it for fish for angling opportunities throughout the year. Now, where does this couple begin? This is where the pond lady's 5 rules for stocking could come in handy. So, rule number 1, species selection. Now, as you all know, I am in Oklahoma, and that's really what I'm comfortable with talking about. Species selection is largely going to vary based on your region of the country. But for our purposes, let's say this couple wants to put largemouth bass, bluegill, and channel catfish in their pond. This is a relatively tried and true combination as far as Oklahoma ponds are concerned, so there's really nothing that raises any kind of flags with this particular stocking regime. Okay, that actually brings me to rule number 2. Based on the species that you've selected for your pond, do you have the right habitat? So we know based on the size and characteristics of this pond that there are probably quite a few different habitat types in it. A common habitat enhancement, especially for ponds in Oklahoma, is the addition of cut cedar trees. Now, eastern red cedars are becoming a nuisance species even though they're native, so removing nuisance cedar trees and sinking them into farm ponds is a quick and cheap way to increase the habitat variety that you have. Okay, so we've talked about the types of species you want in the pond, and we've determined that you have the appropriate habitat types available. So the next rule is this: determine the stocking density of the pond. Now, traditionally, stocking rates were determined by developing a number of fish to stock per acre. However, depending on the size or ranges of sizes of fish that are available to stock, the total weight per number of fish may vary a little or a lot. For example, 100 3-inch bluegill may weigh significantly less than 100 5-inch bluegill. By stocking your pond based on the total weight of fish, you are more carefully calculating for the carrying capacity of your pond and are therefore less likely to exceed it. Another factor about stocking density that I think is important relates to the actual stage at which you get your fish for stocking. So traditionally, new ponds were always started with either fry or fingerlings that you stock at a very high rate, with the assumption that there's going to be a percentage of those fish that are naturally going to die as soon as they're stocked in the pond or very quickly after that. Of course, if this assumption is somehow broken by, say, having all of the fingerlings or fry that were stocked somehow survive, there is a chance that you could have potentially overstocked your pond right out of the gate. When sourcing fish, we always prefer to choose fewer, larger individuals to stock rather than more smaller individuals. This is with the understanding that larger fish have a greater ability to survive the stocking event and therefore become a breeding member of the population in that pond. Okay, now that we have determined the species we want at what density and we have the right habitat types, the next factor, which is my 4th rule of stocking, would be timing. The correct timing of stocking events can be make or break for a pond. For example, we would never want to stock a predator fish into a pond before it has had time to develop a forage base. This means that in the scenario outlined where we want to stock bluegill, largemouth bass, and channel catfish, we would most likely want to stock our bluegill in the fall as soon as there is a developed invertebrate community, and then stock our largemouth bass in the spring. Or if we need to wait to stock our bluegill till the spring, we would want to wait until late summer or fall to stock our largemouth bass. The channel catfish in our example can either be stocked in the fall, spring, or summer depending on their availability, and the literature still suggests that they will need to be periodically restocked as most ponds may not have sufficient spawning habitat for reproduction. Okay, so now that we have selected our species, we know that there are the appropriate habitat types available. We know at what rate to stock each species and at what time. The last rule of stocking fish is to source fish from a reputable vendor. I can't stress this enough. The quality of the fish you stock in your pond will very likely affect the success of your fishery as it develops. Sometimes the biggest vendor in your area may not necessarily produce the best quality of fish. Sometimes hatcheries can even have issues with parasites that you can potentially introduce to your own pond that can be very difficult, if not impossible, to eradicate or control. There is also a chance that some vendors or hatcheries could potentially try to sell you more fish of one species or more species than your pond can actually sustain. This can lead to problems all on their own. So briefly, the Pond Lady's top 5 rules for stocking a pond are to select the right species, make sure you have the right habitat types available, make sure that you stock at the right densities at the right times, and that you source from a reputable vendor or hatchery. If you want more information or clarification about anything I've mentioned here, be sure to contact me or get in touch with your state's Fish and Game Agency and speak to a fisheries biologist directly. That's all for the Pond Lady for now. Stay safe and healthy out there.
And that concludes tonight's Fish Nerd segment, The Pond Lady, with host Amy Robeson. This is generic in-house announcer IP Freely, imploring everyone to join the fight to protect and defend our dwindling natural areas. Good night and happy angling.